Hi, folks, it's Mark Merrill with Firm. More good or bad news for the USA and for Maine? Well, we'll see. We got a story of common sense, believe it or not, folks, from our friend you see here on the top, Billy Bob Faulkingham, the House GOP minority leader, for all Mainers about the Mills administration's spending. We'll get to that in just a moment. Plus, we got an update from a few issues in our state about just about everything from taxes to bad spending, SNAP benefits, and what kind of a primary race it's going to be between Janet Mills and Graham Platner. But our first report is from a previous interview we had with GOP House Leader Billy Bob Faulkingham on the governor's enormous budget and tax plans. As you see, there she is, always pleading her case. And her budget and tax plans, yuck, and how the next generation of taxpayers cannot stand the ongoing spending, folks, with no balance or accountability by any of the Democrats. Here's what Mr. Faulkingham had to say about that.
We've clearly won on, the budget issue. So, it's hard to beat them in this building where they control the governor, the House, the Senate, and, a veto happens. Maybe they just go ahead and pass another one on their own anyway. It seems like we don't win in this building, but where we are winning is outside of this building. And I think that was very clear when you looked at the governor's polling numbers before the whole transgender blow up in the White House. Before that, the governor was underwater, 48% approval, 49% disapproval. And that was the worst she had ever been performing. And when you looked at those polling numbers, it was all based on the budget issues. And
surprise,
when people weigh in on a poll like that, they see the governor as the party. She's representative of the party. So the Democrat Party is losing on the budget issues, all these continuous bigger budgets, more taxes, more spending that they keep doing. And it's not going to get any better because you got to remember there's another supplemental budget coming. The first budget was unbalanced. So they're going to come in with another supplemental budget, which don't forget is going to include the taxes that the governor talked about, all along. They sort of dodged that, as you said, kicked it down the road a little bit.
been using that for a long time. But
So they kicked those taxes down the road, but they're still out there. They're still going to be coming. So they're going to come in the supplemental budget. There'll be more spending, more state positions, more taxes. So I've got my eyes on that budget, see how they're going to navigate that. But if we can survive another 2 years in the state of Maine, the people will have a chance to get the budget they want in the next election.
I have the faith in the people.
26. Yeah.
I have faith in the people.
I have faith in the people. I have a lot of faith in the people, especially, like the younger generation. I have a daughter that's 20 years old, and what I see in her generation is a generation that's not in line with what these people are selling them. They don't want it. That's not what they want for their future.
Pretty much words of wisdom there, as Billy Bob Faulkingham, ladies and gentlemen, explained, as you heard. And so, with that being said, we're going to move on to our next input here from the Maine Policy Institute. Before we do, got some information we want to pass along here in just a second here. And get some things set up in the meantime. It's hard, ladies and gentlemen, it really is, when you have your own adult children on their own, in my case, for quite a few years. Graduated college, both of them. Very happy about that, knock wood. And out on their own, both married. But folks, Governor Mills has continued, and how it affects future generations here, to blast Republicans and avoid requests now turned into demands by the federal government to receive Title IX federal funds, or not, and then by forcing transgender boys and girls sports, plus obvious voter fraud situations, and no accountability. As we at Firm have previously stated, for the expenditures of 2 budgets, totaling, folks, up towards $11 billion. Before that, it was $8 billion. It just keeps tacking on the money, the taxes. Where's this going? It's going to affect not just baby boomers' children, adult children's budgets and lives. It's going up over the next 2 fiscal years through 2027 and 2028 if she has her way. And she won't even be in office, at the state of Maine anyway. And God help us all if this woman goes on to serve in the United States Senate, replacing Susan Collins. That's our next story, folks. I'm going to get to that right off here. As she is opposing Graham Platner. I think a lot of people know that already. So with this particular story, folks, we went and got some information on some feedback from the Maine Policy Institute as they took some parting shots at Janet Mills and her campaign, which is not really going all that well, we understand, for the U.S. Senate seat, as we said, that Susan Collins currently has and has had for quite some time, versus Graham Platner right here. So here now, folks, is the Maine Policy Institute hosts debating who gets the Democratic primary nomination next year.
She's gonna that lead is probably gonna even increase again, frankly, after she has to deal with legislators trying to pull her on a whole bunch of stuff where they can make some progressive rallying cry. They're gonna pass a millionaire's tax onto her lap and make her veto it, and then they can.
They're not gonna do that in an election year. Are you kidding?
Well, they genuinely
They're
think
stupid, but they're not that stupid.
Some of their constituents. We had legislators multiple times, year after year, say, "Oh, my constituents are telling me they want to be taxed more. How dare you?" I mean, we outright have several bills. I mean, we had one legislator refuse to sign on to the supplemental because it didn't have a millionaire's tax on it.
Yeah, that's true. I did look it up, though. It was 58 to 24. It was a 34-point advantage for Platner.
Then you've got me there, but you're still down 20.
Oh, yeah.
Assuming there's anything that you actually would believe at that point.
The other thing that I wanted to say, though, is because I do believe, because you're talking about a Democratic primary, I see a world where, the left-wing wackadoodles out there are all gung-ho for Platner, and there's nothing, he could... Their affection for him is just like when Trump joked I could go shoot somebody on whatever street, and everybody Fifth Avenue, and everyone would still vote for me. I think that Platner is proving that he has that appeal among his base. I think the question is, how many more 10, 15, 20% favoring Platner polls come out between now and February or March, or when does Mills throw in the towel? Because if this keeps going, I don't think she would want to leave as an incumbent governor and get destroyed in a primary like this. I really don't think she would.
True girl bosses don't quit and they stand up to,
Well, they also are deluded and have a bubble around them of warped reality where they think that they're actually way more popular than they are. They can stare polling like that in the face and not believe it.
Yeah, and I also think it would be like you basically have potentially leading up to the primary, if she doesn't get out, you will have so much Democrat on Democrat crime because Chuck Schumer and that money machine versus the like hyper progressives that are propping up Graham Platner. I mean, whoever wins, there's going to be so much ammunition for Susan Collins just on what the Mills and Platner teams are digging up and saying about one another. You know what I mean? Like one of those narratives is going to become the prevailing narrative that Collins and her team can also latch on to whoever wins.
That's a really good point about the after primary Democratic fissure. Because we've seen this in other places where like Bernie candidates lose to establishment guys. The Bernie bros get very angry about that, and they get wicked dispirited by it. And I don't think that, say whatever you want to about Susan Collins, right? But she ain't Trump. She's not this unholy figure to them, right? They're not so scared or angry at her that they must crawl over broken glass. I can see a lot of those people staying home if somehow Mills does squeak it out and she ends up getting the nomination. Like, I could see that being a group of people that stays home.
2016, Hillary Clinton, very arguably, she had a much better chance of winning that election if she hadn't had to have such a heated primary with Bernie Sanders,
I can see the reverse too, where a lot of like soccer mommy types either don't vote for Platner or vote for Collins instead. If Mills were to lose, you know what I mean?
I totally see that. 100% see that. So I guess the ultimate question for the group now is, I share Jake's skepticism about that poll, but do you believe that it's reflecting reality or some version of reality? Like, is Graham Platner actually up, and is he up comfortably right now in reality?
Like, for whatever it's worth, I don't know how good of a gauge this is or metric, but it's really interesting whenever I'm like on social media and I see any post about Mills, like even on from her own campaign, like from her own Facebook page, every single comment is just people
Negative.
just destroying her and like, nope, I'm Graham all the way, I'm Platner all the way. It's like just based on that metric, like it's online. It just seems like she has zero support. Everyone seems to be in the Graham camp.
And in person too. I mean, Graham's doing these events around Southern Maine, sort of the coast or whatever, and there's like 700 people at some of these things.
Yeah.
You don't see that at a Janet Mills event.
No.
Yeah, and
Does she even have events?
And prior,
Actually, I don't think so.
Nobody turning out at the Janet Mills rallies, huh? Well, it's not that people, I guess, don't care. It's the fact that people don't like her anymore. That's what that came down to be, folks. And that's our program, folks. In the meantime, we leave everything up to you, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you the voters. And you can take advantage of our organization anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, when it comes to letting us know what's on your mind and ideas for other topics or something we may not have ever even thought of. fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. Truth, facts, reality, and common sense all the time, folks. Always. Always pray. And give it up for our state, for our president, to engage the Constitution. And remember, we're always about the Bill of Rights, defender of the First Amendment, and many of the other amendments in the top 10. And paragraph 2, always, of the Declaration of Independence. You should get one of our pamphlets and check it out sometime, folks. We, the people, as it says on our car around central Maine, have always had the power and the ability to replace tyranny and treason in government. Peace to all.